Lovely. So I will kick off, and as people join, we'll add them as we're going along. So a big hello and thank you to everyone who's joined us this evening. My name is Anna Burley. I'm the Policy Officer for the Co-operative Party. Some of you are Zoom regulars with us, so you'll be sick and tired of my face by the time COVID is finally over, but it's nice to see you again. And for people who are joining us for the first time, welcome, and it's really lovely to get some new faces in as well. A tiny bit of housekeeping from me before I hand over to our speakers. First is that you should know that we're recording this event. We record all of our events because not everyone can join us live. They go on our YouTube channel, and it means that people can catch up after the event and get themselves sort of clued up and informed on all the interesting things that our speakers have to share. So if you don't want to be on the recording, chances are if you don't speak you won't be, but just in case, if you don't want to be on the recording, you do have the option to turn your video off. It's at the bottom left of your screen and says stop video. If you're asking a question, please bear in mind that you will be visible to everyone on the call, so have clothes on, please, would be great. I should also just do a bit of a heads up that you'll find you're all muted. It's not that I'm not interested in what you have to say, it's just that if people start unmuting themselves, we get lots of background noise and feedback. So please keep yourself on mute so that we can hear from our speakers. There will be an opportunity to ask questions once we've heard from both Geraint and Jemima. And if you're asking a question, I'll name you and you can unmute yourself to ask your question, then put yourself back on mute if that's okay. In order to ask a question, there's lots of ways you can do that. You can either use the chat function. I'll be monitoring that, as will my colleague Izzy. You can use the hands up button, which I think if you go into reactions at the bottom, there's a raise hand button. You're also able to virtually applaud your speakers if you fancy. And if neither of those are working for you, then you can email events@party.coop. Izzy is monitoring that email throughout this evening's event, and will pass questions over to me. So I think that is all, and it's a really important topic that we're going to be talking about tonight, so I'm going to get on to that really quickly. We're talking about air pollution and imposing World Health Organization air quality limits. This comes off the back of a piece of work that Geraint's been leading in the House of Commons around putting some of these limits in law so that we're able to take really substantive action to tackle air pollution, improve air quality and make our streets safe for everybody. We are very lucky to be joined both by Geraint Davies, who's MP, Labour and Co-operative MP for Cardiff West, and who's a member of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee, as well as running the all-party parliamentary group on air quality. And we also have Jemima Hartshorn, who is the amazing campaigner who set up Mums for Lungs, which is a campaign organisation in South London, in my patch, in Lambeth. And they're campaigning for clean air for everyone. They believe that air pollution is a public health crisis. Elected representatives aren't doing enough about it, and they're trying to put the fire in our bellies to do a lot more and to make streets safe for everyone, especially children and babies. So I'm going to hand over to Geraint first to give a bit of an update on what he's been doing in Parliament this week, and then I'll be handing over to Jemima, and then we will open it up for questions. So over to you, Geraint, and around 5 minutes, if that's all right. I'll give you a heads up when we're at about 4.5.
Cool, thank you so much, Anna. And just as a matter of interest, I am the MP for Swansea West, not Cardiff West.
Sorry, that is an error in my document, and there we go. My fault for just reading it rather than engaging my brain. It's been a long day already.
There's a bit of sensitivity there.
Not to offend anyone on the call from Swansea, from Cardiff, but Swansea's way better, obviously.
Anyway, I'm the Co-operative and Labour MP for Swansea West, and I chair the all-party parliamentary group on air quality. And I've been active on this for some years, put in a clean air bill in 2017, in fact. And I'd like to first of all say a really big thank you to all the cooperators who are here tonight and beyond, who've done so much in the last few days to send letters and emails to MPs, something like 1,000 received over the weekend by MPs saying we want World Health Organization air quality standards in the Environment Bill. And I think that's been part of a campaign, and there's other people involved, like Mums for Lungs here tonight with us, British Lung Foundation, Mums Net, Royal College of Paediatricians and Child Health, etc., who've been campaigning for this because they know, as you know in this audience probably, that the Royal College of Physicians came out with a figure of 40,000 deaths, premature deaths from air quality a year. We understand now that the number is more like 64,000, and it costs about 20 billion a year in terms of NHS and lost economic costs. This is a massive issue. And of course, air pollution essentially is a sort of aging process that attacks all your organs, in particular, of course, your brain, your heart, your lungs. So people get strokes, they get respiratory problems, lung cancer and disease, heart attacks. And the smaller particulates also get straight into the bloodstream. And in fact, unborn children get penetration of the smallest particulates via mothers' bloodstreams. So, and we're seeing reports of mental health problems for children, anxiety, depression, lack of concentration. For older people, of course, it's a matter of dementia. And for everybody, it's a matter of, sort of living a less healthy, shorter life. So the actual quantum of people who are dying prematurely is on a sort of par with the number who died last year from coronavirus. But this is sort of every year, and it is a national and international scandal. That's about taking 7 million lives prematurely worldwide. So we need to do something about it. The government, of course, claim that air pollution standards in Britain have been going down in the last 10 years. But what they actually mean by that is that they've closed down coal-fired power stations. They've exported our manufacturing to China. And when you look at the actual air pollution in urban environments where people actually live, it's been going up largely because of diesel cars, but also to a certain extent from coal and wood burning stoves. And there's other particular impacts from agriculture as well. But the key culprit we're focusing our mind on, of course, is diesel cars. The other important bit of evidence that's been emerging is the relationship with coronavirus itself, where Harvard came out and said for every microgram of per cubic meter of PM2.5, you see an extra 8% deaths. In Germany, they did a study to show it was more like 14% deaths, but it stands to reason, really. While people are saying, oh, these are correlations, not causation, it's fairly obvious that if pollution undermines your respiratory system, then you are weaker to get to dying from it. And we've also got research from Queen Mary's University College London showing that your ACE2 receptors in your throat and your nose are more receptive if you've had a lot of pollution to taking on the virus. So infection and death rates are highest. And of course, we also know that pollution is worst in the poorest neighborhoods that tend to be the most diverse neighborhoods. So there's this interaction of poorer people, often more ethnically mixed and cramped conditions, exposed to more pollution and worse health, having higher COVID death rates. And this is really a scandal. And the way forward on this, of course, is to have universally applied World Health Organization standards. And we were going for 10 micrograms per cubic meter by 2030 with an interim target of 12.5. Now, what all that means is if 1 microgram increases COVID death by between 8 and 14%, if we can move it from 15 towards 10 for each one, you're talking about saving thousands of lives, both from pollution and for at the moment, at least, from coronavirus. So this is an enormously important campaign. I'm really grateful for the cooperative support on this. And of course, the government is, people will be aware, of course, of the tragic case of Ella Kissimmee Deborah, who was a 9-year-old girl who died having gone 28 times to hospital with asthma attacks over just 3 years, living in Lewisham, some 30 meters from the South Circular. And on the coroner's report, I'm sure people here will know, for the first time in legal history, the explanation was given as a cause of death, air pollution, which was inducing and exacerbating asthma attacks ultimately killed her. And had World Health Organization standards been, of course, in play when she was of that age and the preceding years, then in all probability she would still be with us today. And that sort of really exemplifies, the ongoing tragedy of so many people, and the preventable death and trauma that is happening. It's not just death, of course, it's bad health through your life. So I went to see the Environment Secretary last week personally with Rosamond, who's Ella's mother, basically asking that in the Environment Bill that was the first day of which was debated in Parliament yesterday with amendments put forward, to incorporate World Health Organization targets, in particular the 10 micrograms by 2030, so we could all work together towards that in a combination of different ways. And the situation with the government is they're sort of talking about average concentrations, which mean they'll be averaging rural and urban environments. Well, that's not going to save anyone's lives, is it? And they're talking about setting targets in 2022 that won't be legally enforceable and could be changed. So it's clearly not acceptable. What happened yesterday is that our amendments did not go through, but the good news is, in a sense, is that the Environment Bill has now been kicked into the long grass into the future. And it's my view that the only way we can get these changes through is not by simply the Labour Party and opposition parties saying we want this, because of course the Conservatives have got an 80 majority. The way to do it is by people like the people in this room and Mums for Lungs and others emailing their MPs saying, look, we know what's happening here. Our children have got a right to clean air. You've got a duty to deliver that. And we want you to vote for World Health Organization standards enforceable in law now, and for all the government departments, whether it's housing, transport, health, DEFRA, to come together as one, not leaving it to DEFRA on its own, to actually deliver these results, to improve our health, to improve our productivity, improve our lives. And we're going to hold you to it. And if you're a red wall conservative who's just won a seat thinking about your political survival, well, you're not going to survive very long if you allow this, industrial scale of injury to continue. So I think I'll leave it there, Anna. Happy to take messages. And again, thanks so much to Jemima and others for taking a lead on these campaigns.
Brilliant. Thank you, Geraint. And, I hope no one joined expecting anything too upbeat. It's a really serious issue, and Geraint's quite right to highlight the huge health risk that it poses to us. I'm now going to introduce Jemima and get Jemima in. It's really great to hear from you, and I will let you go. You'll do a much better job at talking about what you're working on than I will.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to speak here, and thank you so much, Geraint, for your update and your inspiring work on this topic. I'll get in touch with you directly to discuss what we can do on this issue. So I used to live in Brixton. I've slightly moved over the border to Herne Hill now, but while I was on maternity leave, I was in Brixton on Cold Harbour Lane, for any people from South London who might know. And I just got really concerned about air pollution and cars. And it's a kind of topic that if you start reading about it, even then, end of 2016, early 2017, you find lots and lots of articles, and one is worse than the next. And then there was information about Ella Roberta, who Geraint mentioned, who died of air pollution, contributing to her very terrifying asthma in Lewisham. And I just got really worried, and me and other parents wanted to turn our anger into action and do something about it. It felt like it was the options seemed to be despairing and worrying, or trying to do something. So that's what we tried to do. And we basically are really concerned about air pollution for all the reasons that Geraint has already outlined. It affects everyone from cradle to much older age. It is really bad for children because they breathe so much. They're closer to cars, which are a major source of air pollution. They breathe more per body weight. They breathe faster, all these things. But long-term exposure to air pollution is also really, really bad. So there are links also to dementia, Alzheimer's, that have been proven from air pollution contributing to these illnesses very strongly. So there are generally two pollutants, which I just want to say because it can be very confusing. One is nitrogen dioxide, and the main source from nitrogen dioxide is, as Geraint already said, is diesel cars, basically. It's that easy. And they primarily cause sort of respiratory illnesses, inflame the lungs, all of that kind of stuff, asthma. And then the other issue is the PM2.5 particulate matter, which is so tiny that it is not filtered out by the lung, but settles anywhere in the body and obviously doesn't belong there. And the newest research this morning showed that particulate matter exposure contributes to to turning blind in age, and to degenerative issues, illnesses in the eyes and things like that. And the main source of air pollution, particulate matter PM2.5, is wood burning, tire and brake wear, which is also the clue why electric vehicles are not a solution. You know, I mean, they are part of the solution to solving the air pollution crisis, but if we had just as many EVs, electric vehicles, as we now have diesels and petrol cars, we would still have a very serious air pollution problem in London. So yeah, and the other thing, as I've just already said, and Geraint said as well, is wood burning for the particulate matter in particular. And this is altogether a pretty terrifying picture, I find, and it's, the more you read about it, the more frustrating it gets, because I live in a smokeless zone, which, you know, the lay person thinks means you're not allowed to wood burn or burn, you know, fossil fuels or whatever it might mean. But that is not the case. Even in a smokeless zone and in a high air quality management area, so an area that is already chosen to need more protection from air pollution, you are allowed to have a so-called DEFRA approved eco stoves. Again, giving a completely false picture of the situation around air pollution as well as climate issues, of course. Because an eco stove, the upper limit of what an eco stove is allowed to emit in particular matter is 6 times the level of what an diesel HGV is allowed to emit. So it is, you know, so if you have your neighbour is wood burning, even if they do it in the middle of polluted Lambeth, in the middle of polluted Southwark or Westminster, in a completely legal way, you can compare it on some pollutants to having 6 HGVs in your back garden. That's terrifying, and that's clearly wrong. And right now, there's very little councils can do about it. There's very little that government is doing about it. And the whole thing feels like a massive mess to me. So that is why we campaign. We campaign at all levels of government. There's more we believe councils can do. There's more the GLA and the Mayor of London can do. There is a lot more that government can do, and there's more MPs can do. On all levels, we really need to see a lot of urgent action in the shortest time frame possible. From the most low key is, in my view, really raising awareness of air pollution, asking people not to idle, asking council sending out the message that during a respiratory pandemic, there should be no wood burning, even if it is allowed, asking people to not do it, because the awareness of air pollution is just so low. So what we do as Mums for Lungs is campaigning at all these levels in different ways. On Monday, we sort of did a Twitter storm about the Environment Bill and the WHO limits that Geraint was talking about, and we're very proud when the hashtag Vote Clean Air was trending at 9 AM. And otherwise, what we do is we sort of do quite a lot of collaborative stuff with lots of other groups, which, you know, because we're so sure that we are all more powerful. There's lots of clean air campaign groups, but many are focused around one very specific issue or one very specific locality. And Mums for Lungs is a bit different in the sense that we campaign on London and UK-wide issues and want to see changes at a more broad level. So we bring together lots of groups. So we got a letter with 107 organisations signing it to government, again on the environment bill, pre-Christmas. And the other thing, the most practical thing we do is we do parent outreach, right? They're parents, or most of us are parents, so we do a lot with parents. And we've been really campaigning strongly and helping parents campaign for School Street, which is the scheme that has cropped up about 300 times in the last 12 months, or actually in the last 6 months, in London alone, which is where you close the road by a school at drop-off and pick-up times, usually an hour each, and it reduces air pollution at the school gate where the kids are clustered. It can enable social distancing depending on the enforcement, and it really encourages parents to travel actively to school. So that is in short what we do. And if you wanted to support us in any way, you'd be all very welcome to join our next meetings or get in touch. We're also particularly interested of a group like this, of individuals who might be interested in supporting us, because you have lots of campaigning experience and you might know a million times more than we do about media, PR, and especially public affairs. It gave us a sleepless night to figure out what had actually happened last night, when the amendment sort of was voted down, but discussions continued and stuff. And if you are, lazy trying to figure out what is happening in Parliament, it's pretty complicated. So thank you very much for your time.
Brilliant, thank you. And it's really good to sort of help to join up that sort of political stuff right down to the practical things that it's possible to do on the ground. I'm going to open it up for questions now. I've had a couple through on the chat, but this is your chance now to put your hand up and ask your question as well. I'm just gonna try and, there we go, sort it so you can see all three of us. This is new Zoom technology that I'm very excited about. So I've got a question first from Kimberly Whitehead. Kimberly, did you want to unmute and ask the question yourself?
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, it was just touching on what Jemima said then. She was obviously reading my mind. It was just, how do we tackle air pollution around schools where children are exposed to higher doses of pollution? Our council in 2019 passed a motion on air pollution around schools, asking for this very thing to happen, and we never heard anything back in response to that.
Great. And do you want to jump in straight away, Jemima? And then Katie Louise, I can see a hand up after. Did you want to just tackle that one? Are you
inside or outside of London?
Lancashire, Red Wall Seat, Hyndburn.
Okay, so I mean, the issue is with, so if you wanted a school street, so if your school is not on a main road, there is a real problem with enforcing school streets right now, because the changes in Parliament haven't happened yet that enable it to put up an ANPR camera outside of London. So right now, if your council wanted to, if your school and the council were supportive of a school street, they would need to man it with barriers and a turtle gate, and that is, I think, quite faffy. So, so I think two things. Firstly, you should contact me and we should speak directly about your situation. And we've got draft letters how to get other parents and everything involved. I do think we're a one-stop shop for school streets. And secondly, I would raise it with your local council that these changes will start happening and that they should look into what other councils are doing. Shropshire has a school street, which also has to work without these current law changes.
Did you want to jump in on anything to do with school streets, Geraint?
Yeah, I would, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, so obviously it's massively important that you don't have idling outside schools, and if possible, you don't have a load of obviously people pulling up in the road. You should talk to your council. You should talk to your councillors, and with a view to getting signs up saying you can't have people shouldn't be driving down these roads at these times and stopping. And the other thing, there's a certain amount of self-policing amongst parents, if it's all agreed in the parents association, and like people knocking on the windows, why have you got your car engine on, and this sort of thing. And before you know it, people know what's happening. And as Jemima said, there are sort of legislative issues, but people should really, to a certain extent, take a lead and get going and campaign with other local parents. And so we're not having all this filth outside our schools, and you'll have to walk the last 300 yards or walk all the way or get on a bike or whatever it is. And we've had enough of people sort of outside schools with their engines on. So that would be my advice. Something
that sort of preceded the push for school streets a bit is play streets. So in my ward, where I'm a local councillor as well as doing co-op party stuff, and we have a number of play streets where they have temporary closures that they sign off sort of the full year's worth, say on a Thursday afternoon from 3 till 5. And all of the houses in the street agree between them that they're going to have this, or, as much as you can reach consensus with a street of 50 people or whatever. And one of the houses looks after the road closed signs and the cones, and it's done by the residents. And then for the couple of hours, it means kids can play outside in the streets, and on sunny evenings, neighbours can have a barbecue or whatever it is. But it's a really nice thing, and it's not, there's no camera or penalty. It does rely on sort of volunteer effort every week. But if you've got an active parents WhatsApp group or whatever, which I'm yet to find a school that doesn't have an active parents WhatsApp, that might be a way of sort of getting halfway to the dream of proper cameras and formal closures that Jemima's able to do in London, where we've got the right rules in place. I am going to bring in Katie Louise. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, sorry, it's Kate Walsh. Now, I didn't know Kim was going to ask a question before me because I'm from the same place as Kim. I am one of the councillors on the council that she's talking about. So, yeah, so we did vote for that, but we are from a two-tier. We are in a two-tier system. So in our council at Hyndburn, we don't have the control over the highway. So we sort of we sort of vote for things and hope that our Lancashire take that on board.
Someone's going to listen. Yeah. I know that Lancashire does have a Labour and Co-op police and crime commissioner, so maybe there's some work that could be joined up with the sort of policing strategies outside schools or something around the county council. I'm going to bring in Councillor Hanif Khan next, if that is all right. Hanif, are you around? Yes. Did you want to?
I am. Thank you very much,
perfect,
Anna, for that. So I am a councillor in London in Hounslow, and actually my portfolio is transport. So I was really interested because I'm one of those who've implemented LTNs and school streets and play streets, you name it. But I really wanted to grab your views on LTNs and idling on some of the streets. We do know that many of the newer cars automatically have the option to you start, they switch off, but there are still many cars, but the perception is that this idling is creating a big problem. So for all of our guest speakers, I'll be really interested on your views on both the LTN and idling, if that's okay. Thank you very much.
Great. I will do LTN idling, and I'll just bring in Callie for another question if you are there, Callie.
Yeah, hello. Because I've worked for councils in the past, I had the impression that environmental health departments can be directly approached by concerned residents and raise their issues, and environmental health officers have to go out there and go and check what's happening and take action. I don't know what the case is with councils at the moment, and do they have the resources to do that sort of thing? They used to do it, but
yeah. So sort of measuring the problem so that we know the places that the most urgent action is needed. Obviously, it's all the whole picture is urgent, but there'll be some roads that are even worse than others and break legal limits. Okay, I'm going to go backwards this time. So Geraint first. We've got low traffic neighbourhoods, idling, and councils and their responsibilities and resources available to be able to monitor air pollution, and what perhaps you think we need to do to measure it better.
I mean, first of all, I think it's very important that there is more measurement, because one of the issues with the government is that they think, oh, well, this will be very unpopular and, you know, people won't want it and it's nanny state or whatever they think. But frankly, if you've got people like Jemima and others who know that outside the schools of their children, there's unhealthy levels of air, once everybody knows, they think, hold on, we're not having this. And then they start knocking on Hanif's door, whoever it is, and say, what are you going to do about it? And this is part of the political dynamic. And I think this is healthy because it gives Hanif and others the authority to take action that with some people it will be slightly unpopular, because obviously it is more convenient driving down the road, leaving the radio on, sitting in the car with the engine on. We understand that, but once people understand people don't like and it's causing harm to our kids, then they'll stop it. So it's a matter of taking the people with you. And obviously, the other thing that's happening is the Environment Bill is trying to sort of pass the ball to councils, and also it's up to you, it's up to, you know, all this sort of stuff. And there's two things to say about that, really. One is that councils haven't got the financial resources. Obviously, they can close roads and stop idling, and I would support that in answer to Hanif. But in terms of some of the, you know, more strategic issues that might need investment in public transport, or I mean, I used to be the leader at Croydon Council, believe it or not, and I was it was involved in getting the tram link, 26 kilometres of light rail there, and that sort of, you know, regional sort of good value sustainable system is one worth having. So I think what we want is the resources and the powers and the joined up government and the local action drumming away to get the change.
And over to Jemima, I doubt there's much there to disagree with, but sort of what powers does having that better
I don't really have a lot to add. I think the issues raised, I think Geraint has basically already responded to them. I think well-designed low traffic neighbourhoods have clearly proven successful in Waltham Forests and places like that. But I do think there are some LTNs where the issues are bigger, and the disruption seems to be a lot more complex. This was all, you know, done in a very short time period. Travel patterns are all over the place. Public transport is not very attractive right now. It's a very difficult time to implement change, and it wasn't planned long term, which might or definitely has an impact on all these schemes. I would just like to say that I also wish public awareness would increase, not just by monitors, but also, you know, every MP, every newsletter, every council should have a reminder about air pollution in it. I get newsletters from my MP who's brilliant, and it says, what's your biggest concerns, and doesn't even mention, you know, air pollution to click on it. It's that kind of stuff. I don't think the awareness is high enough. The wood burning, the awareness of wood burning being a health issue is basically non-existent in this country. And I think, you know, everyone who's got a newsletter has an opportunity and a responsibility to do something about it. And as far as I know, only Winchester Council, Winchester combined with the New Forest, has done a really, really good flyer and dropped it in every house recently on wood burning. Wow. But that is sort of the first thing. You don't, you know, just air pollution monitoring, you only know what to look for if you know it's bad.
And I would echo that for any councillors on the call, be looking to sort of tap into issues that their residents care about. When we were emailing our members and supporters with information on Geraint's work recently, we had a huge response to that. So do I wouldn't say it necessarily broke the internet, but it definitely got close. You know, it is a really good topic to be engaging with your residents on, and a real opportunity for people to share their ideas about what would work in their street, and that sort of bottom-up politics that as cooperators we like. I have a question from John Bassendine. Are you there, John? Would you like to ask it yourself?
Yes, thank you. We've had campaigns in our local area, which is in West Kent, about creating 20-mile-per-hour zones. And I wondered what role they can play in reducing air pollution on the streets.
Great, thank you very much. And I have a question and a comment from Vicky Gilbert. You've got your hand up. Please feel free to unmute yourself. Oh, no, 2 questions, sorry.
Hi, yeah. Well, the main thing I wanted to ask is I live in North Tyneside, and we have a campaigning transport users group, which is just ordinary people like the mums group from below, but we have formed an alliance with the council. But we always keep coming up when we're talking wood burning stoves that they can't do anything, and I putting it into magazines and things like this that they put out. I wondered, because I know that London has 13% of its PM 2.5s are actually from wood burning stoves, which is a huge amount, and I wondered if they've got more powers than ordinary councils.
Great. So that is a good one. There's also a comment from William Edwards in response to the discussion about school streets, just to say there is a solution outside of London. Our village school in rural Essex has a new stopping restriction. So it sounds like William needs to connect up with our team up in Hindburn to see how we can make that work. And also a sort of a comment from Ian Peaty about barbecues and the impact that barbecues have on air pollution and what we can do about that. You're right for me to do Jemima then Geraint this time, so Geraint doesn't steal all your points, Jemima.
Yeah, so, well, thank you. 20 miles per hour, I can't remember the technical reason, but generally good for air pollution because I think there's less stop and start. So it's a smoother ride, so less brake and tire wear. And, okay, the wood burning one. So it is a really real problem. And actually the particulate matter amount in London is more like 31% of particulate matter produced in London is from wood burning. So it's absolutely horrendous. And in London, everyone is on the grid, I believe. So I don't think anyone actually needs a wood burner for heating. I think the powers that the councils have seem to be completely inadequate and insufficient. And that is a real problem. So we're doing a bit of a campaign around it. So if you want to join, please get in touch. So the first thing is that we've emailed all councils in London asking them to do a flyer and drop it to residents' rounds on wood burning. And we've had sort of some success that at least some websites were updated and things like that. But generally the issue is so big and I feel it needs national legislation to stop giving out DEFRA eco certificates to wood burners that are, you know, very polluting.
Thank you very much. And that is a clear call to action for you, Geraint. Let's get the law changed.
Yeah, because I heard, I might be wrong, that the wood plus coal burning contribution was even higher, near to 38%. And I was shocked by that, I've got to say. But it is more diesel cars, obviously terrible culprits, but obviously they do try and put some sort of filters on them. When you're just burning wood and it's just pumping out, then obviously it's particulates going everywhere. That being said, there needs to be more. I support everything Jemima is saying about constraining all these things. We need to have a clear understanding of how different particulates affect us, though, because the diesel toxicity is worse than toast, for instance, and in the middle there you've got brake pads. So these different particulates, they're just the same size, but they work differently in the body. But we do need to take action on wood burners and coal burners. On the point about 20 miles per hour, I mean, the main reason they were brought in, obviously, is for child safety, because if a child's hit at 20 miles an hour, they'll probably live, and otherwise they would die at 30 miles an hour. It does actually discourage people from driving at all, because if you've got a lot of 20 miles an hour, so there's a lot of people I've heard have said, oh, I've had enough of this, I'm going to walk. Well, that's great. Do that then. We've had enough of this 20 miles an hour, I want to zoom about. Well, and if you're stopping and starting, it's a problem. So generally I support 20 miles an hour, and I'm sure that overall in aggregate will reduce the amount of pollution as well.
Excellent. And do either of you have a view on barbecues?
Cook less sausage. I mean, I think that if you compare wood, I mean, this is a very difficult area, of course, isn't it? Obviously, if everybody had a barbecue all the time, it would be terrible. If you were talking about people with wood burners, sort of burning wood every day, I think that's a slightly different situation. That a group of neighbours all come together in one house, and it's every few weeks during the summer period have a barbecue. But I haven't got I sort of feel reluctant to say ban barbecues.
I guess no, I'm not necessarily asking you to ban barbecues, but in terms of the materials that people burn on them, I think there is great variation and maybe not very good labelling about what is better or worse. I don't know if you had a view on this, Jemima, if it's an area you want to
I don't have a specific view on barbecues. I think it's all about awareness, frankly. Yeah. If you really know that this is toxic for your kids standing in it, for yourself standing in it, then you're going to think about how often you have it, what you put on it, and if you make sure that that you put a blanket over it or whatever, smother it at the end of, when the sausages are done. But it's all about awareness. Awareness is absolutely a first massive step, I believe.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to call it an evening there. It's probably people's tea time, and it's been a really interesting and thought-provoking discussion. Something for all of us to do when we hang up today. Anyone on here with a mailing list, whether you're a branch officer in your local Labour or Co-op party, or if you're a local councillor, or you run other local campaigns, you're part of your residents association, well, you've got a job to play in raising awareness. I put the link to Mums for Lungs in the chat for you all. You can go to their contact us page if you want to get in touch with Jemima about things that you can do at really practical things you can do at a local level, and to get involved in some of that campaigning. I've also linked to Geraint's website in the chat, and I'm sure that you'd be very happy to hear from anybody who wanted to get more involved in your work on air quality. Perhaps you've got a particular story that you're able to share to help Geraint raise the issue in Parliament, or maybe there are particular barriers that your council is hitting that need to be unpicked at a Westminster level, for example. So I think probably our takeaway from this is communicating both with each other and everyone else we know as well about air quality and wood burning stoves. I'm going to go and pick up the phone to my parents and give them a telling off about how often they're lighting theirs, for sure. So big thank you to both Jemima and Geraint.
Final comment, Anna.
Oh yes, please do.
I don't mean to be rude to you. I just want to make the comment, and probably Jemima wants to say a sign off as well. But Jemima mentioned how disappointing it was you didn't get this vote through yesterday. And what I wanted to say, I half mentioned it, that this environment bill is going to come back in a couple of months, and then we've got COP26. We're hosting COP26, and I'm pressing. I said to the Environment Secretary, I said, wouldn't it be great if you could say at COP26 there's 7 million people dying from air pollution. We are the first country to introduce these World Health Organization standards and get all departments to do it. So the takeout really, and I think it's Jemima's takeout, that we keep campaigning, keep it going up the political agenda, and it will happen. So oh no, we tried and we failed, we've got to go back to barbecuing or whatever it is. We just got to keep going because we're doing it for everyone. And so I want to thank everyone here for getting involved and keep amplifying this, and it will happen. Thank you very much. Over to Jemima, perhaps for a final word.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me, and I'm happy to pre-draft anything someone wants to put in a newsletter on air pollution.
Perfect. Well, you heard it here first. You can get your excellent, high quality and fact-checked content from Jemima so that we can really communicate and raise awareness effectively, and watch this space for more action in Parliament so that we're able to get the law changed. Thank you so much. We'll be back. We have Zooms every week, usually on Wednesdays, so watch your inbox for details of next week's. And stay home and look after yourselves. Thank you very much. And don't get in the car. Bye-bye.
Bye.